Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Dear viewers, in the previous sessions of this topic, we have been discussing the codices attributed to Abdullah ibn Masud and to Ubayy ibn Ka'b, the two very respected and honored companions of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We have discussed in detail the different rearranged codex of Ubayy ibn Ka'b in the previous sessions, and we have seen both the questions which arise on its text as well as on its chain of narration. Today, inshallah, we'll take a look at the codex which is ascribed to Abdullah ibn Masud, and I have already disclosed this before you that there are two primary sources in this regard which narrate this differently arranged codex of Abdullah ibn Masud. One of them is the Al-Fahrist of Ibn Nadim, and the other one is Al-Itqan of Suyuti. While the first of these, or the Fahrist of Ibn Nadim, describes or seemingly describes an eyewitness account, Al-Itqan merely records a narrative in which a differently arranged codex of Abdullah ibn Masud is depicted. However, before I start off with Abdullah ibn Masud's codex and the way and the various questions which arise on it, let me also first complete the information and picture regarding his codex vis-a-vis some of the additional information which is provided to us by various authorities, and foremost among them is Ibn Nadim himself, because after he has narrated this differently arranged codex, he has also made some comments on them, and I think that it's absolutely in place to take a look at what he has said after he has recorded this arrangement. So the first thing that he says is that there are a total of 110 surahs in the mushaf. So this is the first point that he makes once he completes the differently recorded arrangement, and as you would recall, this is the one in which Fazl ibn Shazan is supposed to have narrated an eyewitness account. Now, the second point which Ibn Nadim makes is that according to another report, Surah Tur precedes Surah Zariyat. So this is another report which he does not mention in detail, but he says that in this particular report, Surah Tur precedes Surah Zariyat. The third point that he makes is that Abu Shazan reports from Ibn Sirin that Ibn Masud would neither write the Mu'awwizatayn nor Surah Fatiha in his Musaf. So here is another report regarding that. And the fourth point that he makes is that Al-Fazl has reported from his chain from Armash that in the reading of Abdullah, it was Ham Mim Sin Qaf. So the name of Surah Shura, it was not Ham Mim Ain Sin Qaf the way it is generally known, but he says that in this particular chain of narration, the name written was Ham Mim and Ham Mim Sin Qaf. So the Ain was missing. The fifth point that he makes is that he himself says that I have seen many Masahif which their scribes attribute to Ibn Masud, but no two Masahif agree with one another. And then he says that I have seen a Musaf which was written about 200 years earlier in which Surah Fatiha was written. So in the previous point, the claim has been made that he would not write, this was made on the authority of Ibn Sirin, that he would not regard Surah Fatiha to be part of the Qur'an. But here he says that he has seen a Musaf which was written about 200s prior to his era, in which Surah Fatiha was actually written. And the fifth point that he narrates is that he says that the following surahs are recorded with variations from the standard ones respectively. So Ibn Nadim is actually giving us some variants of some of the surahs which we know in a different shape and different structure and construction. But he says that these are the sources in which there are some sources in which he finds that they have a different version. So first I'll give you the Surah Asr version which he has referred to, and this is recorded in basically the version which is the Darul Kutub al-Ilmiya version, recorded by them as well, and also in Gustav Flugel's Al-Fahrist, the way he has published it and the way he has described it. And this variant of Surah Asr is like this: Wal Asr laqad khalaqna al-insana lafi khusr wa innahu fihi ila akhir ad-dahr illa alladhina amanu wa tawasaw bit-taqwa wa tawasaw bis-sabr. So this is an entirely new variation of, or a variant of Surah Asr. We know the standard or the arrangement or the way this has been found in other Masahif, more commonly known to Muslims. Surah Asr reads like this: Wal Asr innal insana lafi khusr illa alladhina amanu wa amilus salihat wa tawasaw bil haqq wa tawasaw bis sabr. But as you can see, the one that I read out to you before on the authority of Darul Kutub al-Ilmiya's edition and of Gustav Flugel's edition. This is recorded in a different way. Similar is exactly the case with Surah Al-Kafirun. So in the Flugel's edition and in that of Darul Kutub al-Ilmiya's edition, the version which is recorded of Surah Kafirun is Kul lillazina kafaru la a'budu ma ta'budun, which obviously means that part of the text is different from the other actual text. The actual text of Surah Kafirun we know is Kul ya ayyuhal kafirun la a'budu ma ta'budun wala antum a'abiduna ma a'bud wala ana a'abidum ma abadtum wala antum a'abiduna ma a'bud lakum dinukum waliya din. However, Flugel's version is the text in which he says that actually the words are Qul lillazina kafaru la a'budu ma ta'budun. And this is the only text which is quoted, and it in all probability shows that the rest of the text is the same as the standard version. So this part is different from the standard version. Similar is the case with Surah Lahab as well. So we have three discrete examples. We have the example of first of all Surah Asr, then we have the example of Surah Kafirun, and now a different version of Surah Lahab. So in the version of Gustav Flugel's, which is actually the version of the same version as that of Darul Kutub al-Ilmiya, the words are Tabbat yada abi lahab wa qad tabba ma aghna anhu maluhu wa ma kasab wa imra'atuhu hammalat al-hatab. So this is how Surah Lahab has been recorded, whereas we actually know in the standard version, or the version more commonly known to Muslims, the words are Tabbat yada abi lahabin wa tabba ma aghna anhu maluhu wa ma kasab sayasla naran zata lahabin wa imra'atuhu hammalat al-hatab fi jidiha hablum min masad. So again we find a variation here. And the fourth and final variation regarding regarding the case of a different surah occurs in Surah Ikhlas. Now here, as we know, the standard version is very, very known to every Muslim because it is read in the prayers and also recited a lot. And that is Qul huwallahu ahad, Allahu samad, lam yalid, wa lam yulad, wa lam yakul lahu kufuwan ahad. However, in Flugel's version and in Darul Kutub al-Ilmiya's version, we have the words Allahu wahid as-samad. So in all probability, the rest of the text is exactly the same. So it would be something like Qul huwallahu wahid as-samad. So that is how the variant exists in Gustav Flugel's version and in that of Darul Kutub al-Ilmiya. So these are four additional pieces of information regarding the versions which are found of these four surahs. Now also there is another thing that needs to be noted, and that is the absence of Surah Fatiha and Mu'awwizatain. And according to Ibn Sirin, Ibn Masud would not write Fatiha or the Mu'awwizatain and in his mushaf. So this is how he has explained it, and he's the narrative above narrative is recorded by Abu Ubayd as follows. And when I say Abu Ubayd, obviously I'm referring to Abu Ubayd Al-Qasim ibn Salam. So he says, عن ابن سيرين قال كتب أبي بن كعب في مصحفه فاتحة الكتاب والمعوذتين واللهم إنا نستعينك واللهم إياك نعبد وتركهن ابن مسعود وكتب عثمان منهن فاتحة الكتاب والمعوذتين. Ibn Sirin said that Ubayy wrote in his mushaf Surah Fatiha, the Mu'awwizatain, and Allahumma inna nasta'inuka and Allahumma iyyaka na'budu. And Ibn Masud wrote none of them. So the words are Tarakahunna Ibn Masud. And Usman, however, wrote from these Fatiha and Mu'awwizatain. So he says the Usmanic collection had both these, the Mu'awwizatain and Surah Fatiha as well. Shawli says that Al-Itqan mentions that in the Qur'an of Ibn Masud there are 112 surahs except the Mu'awwizatain. Now this shows that Surah Fatiha was found in his mushaf, and Shawli says that three other narratives quoted by As-Suyuti also corroborate this fact. Another thing which is also recorded by As-Suyuti is the existence of Basmala at the beginning of Surah Bara, Surah Tawbah. Now this is recorded by As-Suyuti, and he says that the author of Al-Iqna has reported that the Basmala was written at the beginning of Surah Bara in the Mushaf of Ibn Masud, and the author himself says that this view is not worthy of consideration. So the author of Al-Iqna had recorded the Basmala, the Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, before Surah Tawbah, which is non-existent in all the other Masahif that we know. But here he says that it was written there. But Suyuti himself then says that this is not worthy of any consideration, and this opinion should not be at all considered. So viewers, this is the additional information which I wanted you to know and be informed of, because this has been this is over and above the arrangement which I have read out to you regarding the mushaf of Abdullah ibn Masud. Now let us analyze his mushaf and see how this differently arranged surah arrangement of Abdullah ibn Masud stands to the test of historical criticism. The first point obviously is exactly the same which has been made earlier on while we were discussing Ubayy ibn Ka'b's mushaf, and that is that there is no student of Abdullah ibn Masud who reports this differently arranged codex of their master, of their teacher. It was very customary, as I've pointed out repeatedly before, that our ancient authorities, our previous authorities, especially the Sahaba, they used to transmit their knowledge mostly through the notes and oral transmission of their own students, and their students would be responsible of transmitting the knowledge of the teachers. And when it was heavily dependent, transmission of knowledge was heavily dependent on how the particular students of a teacher would narrate and transmit what their teacher would say. Here, obviously, we are facing with this unusual situation that we find no student of Abdullah ibn Masud reporting different surah arrangements in his mushaf. We know that he was a very celebrated companion of the Prophet. He had a number of students, but none of his students, or even the students of his students, report a differently arranged mushaf, which is of course something very, very grave. On the other hand, what we do find is that in the case of Al-Fahrist, we find a person, Al-Fazl ibn Shazan, who died in 260 Hijrah. He is the person who reports an eyewitness codex attributed to Abdullah ibn Masud. And in the case of Al-Itqan, we find that Jarir ibn Abdul Hamid, he is the person who died in 188 Hijrah, and he reports this list for the first time as recorded by Al-Itqan. So you can see, viewers, that there are almost 100 years. We know that Abdullah ibn Masud died in the mid-30s, and we find that the first person who reports this differently arranged mushaf to have died in 188 Hijrah, and he is Jarir ibn Abdul Hamid. So almost a century, or more than a century, elapsed between these two persons. So this is obviously a strange thing, that why is that this report has surfaced after such a long time, and none of the immediate students of Abdullah ibn Masud reported a differently arranged codex. The second thing which we need to understand is that two lists had been displayed before you in one of the previous lectures, in which we had seen how Abdullah ibn Masud's narrative, differently arranged codex has been reported. So there is one which recorded by Al-Fahrist, and the other one is recorded in Al-Itqan. Now, after the first 11 entries, these lists do not correspond with one another. So they are reporting the same codex from the same person, Abdullah ibn Masud, but in the first 11 entries, they report the same arrangement of the surahs. But after those first 11 entries, we find that they diverge, and there is no commonality later on between these differently arranged surah sets. So the question arises that which one should we believe and which one should not believe. So this is again an anomaly which is something very, very clear. And the third thing is that I have just pointed out that at the end of the text of Al-Fahrist, it is said that the number of surahs which exist in this is 110. Whilst when we actually count the surahs, they come out to be 105. And this anomaly has been pointed out by Arthur Jeffrey as well, that how come that when the text at the end of Al-Fahrist, when we read it, it says that there are a total of 110 surahs, but when we actually count them, they come out to be 105. Obviously pointing out the defective nature of these lists. Ibn Nadim has also pointed out, as I said earlier, that he has seen many Masahif which are attributed to Abdullah ibn Masud, but no two of them agreed. So this is another point of critique, and so this is the fourth point, that there are so many Masahif attributed to Abdullah ibn Masud, but we find none of them Actually, he has reported that he did not find any two of them agreeing with one another. And he has also said that the Basmala verse, this is actually said by Suyuti, that as far as the non-existence of, or the existence of Basmala verse is concerned, this is something which should not even be considered. So this is a fifth point of criticism, that we should not even consider that. Now, as far as the absence of the Mu'awwidhatayn is concerned, which is obviously a grave matter, I have devoted a separate topic to this whole issue, and we shall discuss this once we finish this topic today, and we shall take up this topic separately in the next sessions, vis-a-vis the fact that Abdullah ibn Masud did not regard the Mu'awwidhatayn to be part of the Qur'an. So we will take it up later on. And the seventh and final point of critique, viewers, would be that if at all there is some truth to these lists, if at all, we can just say perhaps that these were the lists in which Abdullah ibn Ubayy roughly, or Abdullah ibn Masud roughly jotted down the various surahs which came to his knowledge. But obviously this was before the Quran was finally compiled, its chronological sequence, and it was perhaps before that final reading took place that these surahs, the way they have been arranged in his mushaf, at best, they could be ones which depict that the pre-Arza Akhira arrangement. So this is what best can be said, although this again is something which seems to be stretching the situation too far. But as I say, this would be perhaps one very wild sort of or very far-fetched interpretation, if at all we think that there is some truth to these arrangements. Now, viewers, let us look at the chain of narration which is reported in this regard. The chain of narration of, we'll look up both these chains of narration. As far as the Al-Fahrist chain of narration is concerned, we find it clearly recorded, and the words are, I'm going to first read out the part which says, describe the chain of narration from Al-Fahrist, and then we'll go on to Al-Itqan. So the words are, قال الفضل بن شازان وجدت في مصحف عبد الله ibn Masud تاليف سور القرآن على هذا الترتيب, which means Al-Fazl ibn Shazan said, I found the arrangement of the Qur'anic surahs in the mushaf of Ibn Masud to be the following. And then the arrangement is described. Now, Al-Fazl ibn Shazan, we know, according to Majma' al-Rajal of Kuhpai, Inayatullah Kuhpai, he died in 260 Hijrah. So we also do not know that who is the person from whom Ibn Nadim got this information, because we know that there is a gap of a couple of centuries between Al-Fazl ibn Shazan himself and Ibn Nadim. So there are basically 2 points of critique. The first is that Fazl ibn Shazan is a person who died in 260 Hijrah, and whatever information he's imparting almost 2 centuries after Abdullah ibn Masud had passed away. So he is a person who has given this information after a long time. And the second is that that Ibn Nadim himself is a person who is recording something on the authority of Al-Fazl ibn Shazan without describing who are the people who are between him and Al-Fazl ibn Shazan. So this is something of an anomaly. And also, viewers, let us now come to the chain of narration of Al-Itqan of Suyuti. And this has been described, this has been recorded on the authority of Ibn Ashta's Kitab al-Masahif. So the words are, and Suyuti is recording these words, قال ابن أشتا أيضا وأخبرنا أبو الحسن بن نافع أن أبا جعفر محمد بن عمر بن موسى حدثهم قال حدثنا محمد بن إسماعيل بن سالم حدثنا علي بن مهران الطائي حدثنا جرير بن عبد الحميد قال تأليف مصحف عبد الله ibn Masud. And then the talif, or the arrangement, is recorded later on. Now, as you would recall, the last person which I read out in this chain of narration is Jarir ibn Abdul Hamid. Now, about Jarir ibn Abdul Hamid, we know that he died in 188 Hijrah at the age of 71. Now, which clearly shows that he was born in 117 Hijrah, and we know that Abdullah ibn Masud died in the mid-30s. So this would seem that there is a lapse of almost 80 years between the death of Abdullah ibn Masud and the birth of Jarir ibn Abdul Hamid, who is the person who is reporting this arrangement. So again, viewers, we can see that this is a is something which cannot be accepted if we measure this information on the yardstick of historical criticism, because the birth and death dates of these two people are separated by almost 80 years, and we don't find people in between them to be clearly mentioned. So this gives us the conclusion that here again the ascription of Abdullah ibn Masud's to Abdullah ibn Masud, this surah arrangement is something which is very suspect. So viewers, if I sum up, I can tell you, I can clearly see or clearly say that both these companions, the way their Masahif have been reported in a different arrangement, both in Al-Itqan and in Al-Farist, they do not give us a picture in which we can rely upon this arrangement, simply because the way they have been reported in history is very, very suspect. And also we find that the questions which arise on its chain of narration, on its text, are also such that unless they have a very sound answer, the way this arrangement has been reported cannot be accepted. So I would, in my personal opinion, reject both these arrangements the way they have been reported, because they don't stand up to the criticism, to historical criticism. So this is as far as this topic is primarily concerned. However, viewers, before I close up, I would also like to point out one small thing which most of you can skip if you want to. For all practical purposes, we have finished the topic, but as a sort of appendix, I would like to point this out also to you, that are two very, very worthy researchers of the past. One of them is Nordicke and his student and disciple Frederick Schwally. He and the other one is Arthur Jeffrey. Both these people and celebrated authorities have cited these lists from Al-Farist and from Al-Itqan. But it is strange to me that people of such stature have faltered in actually just citing these lists the way they have been reported in these original sources. So these original sources which are before us and which were before them, they still exist. But while copying out from these sources, they have made some errors which to me are inexplicable. And I have written a detailed sort of a monograph on that, an article on that. But I'm not going to go into details and present all the details. I'm just going to content myself with giving one example each from both Al-Farist and from both Schwally and from both Jeffrey, how they have misquoted, I would say, or there has to be, if there is some other explanation, I would welcome it, but it seems that it's a case of misquotation or misinterpretation of the lists of both these authorities. So viewers, let me start off by pointing out one mistake which Schwally has made while copying out from the list of Itqan vis-a-vis Ubayy ibn Ka'b's mushaf. As I said, there are several mistakes, but I'm just pointing out one of them. As you can see in the screen before you, the list in Arabic displays the actual list which is found in Al-Itqan, and the one below it, the list below it, is the one which Schwally has actually copied out, and the numbering given here are the number or the name of the surahs, or the number of the surahs as it is found in the Usmanic Codex. So in the Arabic we find the words Summa al-Fath. I'm just narrating before you the relevant part. Summa al-Fath, Summa al-Qital, Summa al-Zihar, Summa Tabarak al-Mulk, Summa al-Sajda, Summa inna arsalna Nuhan, Summa al-Ahqaf. So viewers, you can clearly see that in the list which is given by Al-Itqan, we have 67, which is Surah Mulk, which is then succeeded by Surah Sajda, which is succeeded by Surah Nuh, and then it comes to Surah Ahqaf. However, you can clearly see that, as you can see the darkened part of the list, that between 67 and 46, instead of writing 32 and 71, which means that between 67 and 46 we have Surah Sajda and Surah Nuh, Schwally has erroneously written 61. So he should have written 67, 32, 71 and 46. But instead we find 67, 61 and 46. So 61 is erroneously mentioned here, and this is actually Surah Saf. And you can also see that this Surah Saf is also present later on after Surah 88. And this again is an anomaly, that how can two surahs be simultaneously present in a mushaf. So this is an example of how Schwally has erroneously copied out the list of Al-Itqan vis-a-vis the mushaf of Ubayy ibn Ka'b. Now, viewers, let me give you an example of how Jeffrey has misquoted from one of the sources. And like his predecessor, Friedrich Schrolle, I'm going to cite the example from Al-Itqan. We have examples from Al-Fahrist as well, but I'm just leaving them out because they are just adding more details. You can look them up in my detailed article. Now, viewers, let me give you an example of how Jeffrey has copied out Ubayy's list from Itqan. So this is an example of an error in which Jeffrey has wrongly copied Ubayy's list from Al-Itqan. As you can see, the Arabic which is being displayed before you is the actual Itqan, the list from Al-Itqan. So the words are, I'm just reading out the relevant portion. Summa al-Hajj, Summa Yusuf, Summa al-Kahf, Summa al-Nahl. And you can see, viewers, that later on is Summa al-Ahzab and then Bani Israel. So Yusuf is 12, number 12, and al-Kahf is 18, and al-Nahl is 16. Whereas, viewers, you can clearly see in the list which is given below, which Jeffrey has actually copied out, you'll find that Surah 12 and Surah 16, between the two surahs, instead of writing 18, which is Surah Kahf, Jeffrey has erroneously written 15, which is Surah Hijr. So Surah Hijr is not found between Surah Yusuf and Surah Nahl, it is Surah Kahf, which is Surah number 18. And as a result of this error, what happens is that 15 of Surah Hijr is repeated twice, as you can see. Once after Surah Yusuf and then after Surah 636, which is Surah Yasin. So this is another error. So instead of writing 18, he has written the word 15, as a result of which Surah 15 or Surah Hijr is repeated twice. So this is an example of how Jeffrey has faltered in copying out the list from Al-Itqan. So viewers, all in all, you can see that these are just two examples in which I have endeavored to show that our two very, very proficient authorities of the past have made this mistake. It, of course, can be attributed to human error, but it seems that this has taken its toll because, as you can see from a more detailed article of mine, that these human errors in citing from these lists are quite a few. And it is really baffling for me to make this observation that two of our very profound authorities have made this mistake of copying out. Anyway, leaving aside this issue, I come to the end of this topic by simply summing up and saying that the lists of Surah of Itqan and of Al-Fahrist, both of Abdullah ibn Masud and Ubayy ibn Ka'b, the way they have been narrated in both these books, they do not stand to the test of historical criticism and therefore have to be rejected. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين والمسلمات.